Hey there, I'm Emma Chen, and boy, do I have a story for you. It's about love, betrayal, and finding yourself. You know, the usual stuff. But trust me, it's anything but usual. So there I was, all set to marry the man of my dreams, Jack Thompson. Tall, handsome, successful, the whole package. We'd been together for 3 years. I thought I knew him inside out. The wedding was just a day away. I was at the venue for the final rehearsal. Everything looked perfect. The flowers, the decorations, the cake. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Then it happened. I went to the changing room to try on my veil one last time, and that's when I heard it. Giggling, coming from behind a rack of groomsmen suits. I peeked around the corner, and there they were, Jack and Olivia, my fiancé and my best friend, kissing, like their lives depended on it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My world crumbled in an instant. But you know what's crazy? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching. They didn't see me. I backed away quietly. My mind was racing. What should I do? Call off the wedding? Confront them? Pretend I never saw it? I don't know how, but I made it through the rest of the rehearsal. I smiled. I laughed. I played the part of the happy bride-to-be. Inside, I was dying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in my head, over and over. How could they do this to me? Jack, the man I trusted with my heart. Olivia, my best friend since college. I thought about all the times we'd spent together. The three of us. Movie nights, weekend trips, birthday parties. Had it all been a lie? How long had this been going on? I needed to talk to someone. But who? My parents were already in town for the wedding. I couldn't burden them with this. My other friends? They were all part of the bridal party. It would be too messy. Then I remembered Leo, my first love. We dated in high school. It was sweet and innocent. We lost touch when we went to different colleges, but I still had his number. I called him at 3 a.m. He answered on the second ring. Emma, is everything okay? His voice was groggy but concerned. I broke down. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. I'm so sorry, Emma, he said finally. What can I do? I didn't know what to say. What could anyone do? But hearing his voice, remembering the uncomplicated love we once shared, gave me an idea. Leo, I said, I need your help. Can you come to my wedding? He agreed without hesitation. We made a plan. It was crazy, probably stupid, but I was past caring. The next day, I woke up early. I got my hair and makeup done. I put on my wedding dress. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My bridesmaids fussed around me. Olivia was there, playing the role of the supportive best friend. She helped me with my veil, her hands steady, her smile bright. I wanted to scream. The ceremony was set to start at 2 p.m. At 1:30, I snuck away. I told everyone I needed a moment alone. Instead, I met Leo in the parking lot. He looked good. Older, more mature, but still with that boyish charm I remembered. He hugged me tight. Are you sure about this? He asked. I nodded. There was no turning back now. We walked into the church together. People gasped. I saw Jack at the altar, his face pale. Olivia, standing with the other bridesmaids, looked like she might faint. I walked straight up to Jack. Hi, honey, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. There's something I need to show you. I pulled out my phone, hit play on the video I'd recorded yesterday. The one of him and Olivia in the changing room. The church erupted in chaos. Jack tried to grab my phone. Olivia burst into tears. Guests started whispering, then shouting. I just stood there, watching it all unfold. I felt strangely calm, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. That's when Jack started talking, fast, desperate. Emma, please, he said. It's not what you think. Olivia means nothing to me. You're the one I love. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It sounded so ridiculous, so cliché. Olivia spoke up then. That's not true, she said, her voice shaking. Jack, tell her the truth. Tell her how long we've been together. And just like that, the whole story came tumbling out. They'd been seeing each other for months. Jack had been playing us both. I looked at Leo. He squeezed my hand. I felt stronger with him there. I think, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, that this wedding is over. I turned and walked out of the church. Leo followed. Behind us, I could hear shouting, crying, confusion. We got into Leo's car and just drove. No destination in mind. Just away from there. Away from the lies and the pain. As we hit the highway, I finally let myself cry. Leo handed me tissues, kept his eyes on the road, let me get it all out. When I could speak again, I asked him, what do I do now? He glanced at me. Whatever you want, Emma. Emma, your life is your own again. And you know what? He was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Hurt, angry, confused, yes, but free. We drove until the sun set, stopped at a small diner for coffee, sat in a booth and talked for hours. About the past, the present, the future. I decided I needed time. Time to heal, to rediscover myself. Leo understood. He gave me his number, told me to call anytime. That night, I checked into a small motel, ignored the dozens of missed calls and messages on my phone. I was done with explanations, with drama. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I was going to travel, see the world, find out who Emma Chen really was, without Jack, without Olivia, without anyone else's expectations. The next morning, I booked a one-way ticket to Paris. It was impulsive, maybe even reckless, but it felt right. I called my parents, told them I was okay, asked them to handle the aftermath of the wedding. They were confused, worried, but supportive. A week later, I was on a plane, watching the city I'd called home disappear beneath the clouds. I felt scared, excited, and for the first time in days, hopeful. So there I was, on a plane to Paris. Just me, a hastily packed suitcase, and a whole lot of mixed emotions. It was crazy. I'd never done anything like this before. The flight was long. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My mind kept racing. What was I doing? Was I running away? Or running towards something? I landed in Paris early in the morning. The city was just waking up. I took a taxi to a small hotel I'd booked online. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and cozy. That first day, I just wandered the street. No plan, no destination. I saw the Eiffel Tower from a distance, walked along the Seine, ate a croissant in a tiny cafe. It felt surreal, like I was watching myself in a movie. Emma Chen, jilted bride turned world traveler. Who would have thought? I didn't check my phone for days. I wasn't ready to face reality yet. I needed this bubble of anonymity, of freedom. After a week, I finally gathered the courage to look at my messages. There were hundreds. From Jack, from Olivia, from friends and family. I deleted them all without reading. The only one I responded to was from Leo. He'd sent a simple text. Hope you're okay. Here if you need me. I wrote back. I'm in Paris. Finding myself. Thanks for being there. He replied almost instantly. Glad you're safe. Enjoy the journey. That made me smile. Leo always knew the right thing to say. Days turned into weeks. I moved from Paris to Rome, then to Barcelona. In each city, I tried to lose myself and find myself at the same time. I visited museums, tried local foods, talked to strangers in broken phrases from my travel guide. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Sometimes, late at night, the pain would hit me again, the betrayal, the humiliation. I'd cry into my pillow in some anonymous hotel room. But each morning, I'd wake up a little stronger, a little more myself. I started a travel blog. Nothing fancy, just a place to share my thoughts and experiences. It was therapeutic, putting my feelings into words. To my surprise, people started reading it. Strangers from around the world left comments, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and healing. One day, in a small town in Italy, I ran into a couple from my hometown. They recognized me from the wedding fiasco. News had spread, apparently. I braced myself for judgment, for pity. Instead, they hugged me, told me they admired my courage. It was unexpected and touching. That night, I wrote a long post on my blog about forgiveness. Not just forgiving Jack and Olivia, but forgiving myself for being blind, for almost settling for less than I deserved. The post went viral. Suddenly, my little travel blog was getting thousands of hits a day. People were reaching out, sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them hope. It was overwhelming. I'd never thought of myself as inspirational. I was just a girl trying to put her life back together. But it felt good. Like maybe all this pain had a purpose. Like maybe I could turn it into something positive. As my blog grew, I started getting offers to write for travel magazines, to speak at women's empowerment events. It was surreal. I said yes to some, no to others. I was still figuring things out, still on my journey, but I was starting to see a future I'd never imagined before. 3 months into my travels, I got an email from a publisher. They wanted to turn my blog into a book, a memoir of my journey from jilted bride to self-discovery. I was hesitant at first. Did I really want to relive all that pain? To put it out there for the world to see? But then I thought about all the messages I'd received from women and men who'd been through similar experiences, who found comfort in my words. So I said yes. I spent the next few months traveling and writing, pouring my heart onto the pages. It was hard, but also incredibly freeing. As I wrote, I realized how much I'd changed, how much stronger I'd become. become? The girl who'd run away from her wedding seemed like a stranger now. I finished the book in a small cafe in Greece. As I typed the last words, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was done. My story was told. That night, I called Leo. We'd been in touch on and off throughout my travels. He'd become a source of support, a link to home without all the painful memories. I finished the book, I told him. Congratulations, he said. I could hear the smile in his voice. How does it feel? Scary, I admitted, but good, really good. We talked for hours. About the book, about my travels, about life back home. It felt easy, comfortable, like no time had passed at all. As we were saying goodbye, Leo hesitated. Then he said, Emma, I'm coming to Europe next month for work. Maybe we could meet up. My heart did a little flip. I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. We agreed to meet in London. It would be my last stop before heading back home. A full circle moment. The weeks leading up to our meeting flew by. I was nervous, excited. I'd changed so much. Had he? Would we still connect like we used to? The day finally came. I waited for him at a cafe near Big Ben. My palms were sweaty. I felt like a teenager again. Then I saw him, walking towards me, that familiar smile on his face. My nerves melted away. We hugged. It felt right, like coming home after a long journey. We spent the day wandering around London, talking, laughing, sharing stories. It was easy, comfortable, but there was something else too, a spark I hadn't felt in a long time. As the sun set, we found ourselves on the London Eye. Looking out over the city, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Leo took my hand. I'm proud of you, Emma, he said, for everything you've done, for who you've become. I looked at him, at this boy I'd loved as a girl, now a man who'd been there for me when I needed it most. And I realized something. My journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And maybe, just maybe, Leo was meant to be part of it. We kissed as the wheel reached its peak. It wasn't fireworks or earth-shattering passion. It was gentle, sweet, full of promise. As we parted, Leo smiled. So, he said, what's next? I laughed. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about that question. I don't know, I said honestly, but I can't wait to find out. We walked hand in hand into the London night. My past behind me, my future uncertain but full of possibility. And for now, that was enough. So there I was, back in London with Leo. It felt like the start of something new, but I knew I couldn't rush into anything. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. We spent a week together in London. It was magical. We visited museums, had picnics in Hyde Park, rode the tube like locals. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. Leo was different from how I remembered. More mature, more confident, but still with that kindness that had drawn me to him all those years ago. One night, over dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Leo asked me about my plans. Are you going back home? I hesitated. Home. It felt like such a loaded word now. I don't know, I admitted. I'm not sure I'm ready. Leo nodded, understanding. You know, he said, you don't have to decide right away. The world's a big place. That got me thinking. Maybe I wasn't done traveling yet. Maybe there was more out there for me to discover. The next day, I got an email from my publisher. They wanted me to do a book tour. Europe, Asia, Australia. 6 months on the road. I showed Leo the email. He read it, then looked at me with a smile. Sounds like an adventure, he said. I bit my lip. Would you want to come with me? The words were out before I could stop them. Leo's eyes widened. Then he grinned. I thought you'd never ask. Just like that, we had a plan. Leo arranged to work remotely. I contacted my publisher to iron out the details. We left London 2 weeks later. First stop, Berlin. The book tour was intense. Interviews, signings, speaking events. But having Leo there made it all manageable. He was my rock, my support system. He'd sit in the back during my talks, giving me a thumbs up when I needed encouragement. At night, we'd explore each new city together, try local foods, visit off-the-beaten-path spots. It felt like we were on our own little adventure. In Paris, we revisited the places I'd been when I first ran away. It was strange, seeing them again with new eyes, with Leo by my side. I was so lost when I came here, I told him as we stood under the Eiffel Tower. He squeezed my hand. And now? I smiled. Now I'm found. As we traveled, my book gained traction. From I Do to I Don't to I Am, A Journey of Self-Discovery became a bestseller. Women would come up to me at signings, tears in their eyes, thanking me for sharing my story. It was humbling and overwhelming. In Tokyo, a young girl asked me to sign her book. You saved my life, she whispered. I hugged her, fighting back tears of my own. Leo was there through it all, celebrating my highs, comforting me during the lows. lows. Our relationship deepened with each passing day, but we were careful. We both knew the pain of rushing into things. We took it slow, savoring each moment. In Sydney, halfway through the tour, I got a call from home. It was Olivia. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma," she said, her voice shaky. I don't know if you'll listen, but I need to apologize." I sat down, my heart pounding. Leo noticed and came to sit beside me, concern in his eyes. Olivia continued, "What I did was unforgivable. I was selfish and stupid. I've lost my best friend, and I have no one to blame but myself." I listened in silence. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part needed to hear this. "I don't expect forgiveness," Olivia said. "I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. Anne, I'm glad you're doing well. You deserve it." After she hung up, I sat there, stunned. Leo put his arm around me. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded slowly. I think I am," and I realized it was true. Olivia's call hadn't reopened old wounds. Instead, it felt like closure. That night, Leo and I walked along Bondi Beach. The stars were bright, the waves gentle. "What are you thinking?" Leo asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm thinking I'm ready to go home." Leo looked surprised. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yeah, I've been running for so long. It's time to face everything, to really move on." Leo smiled. "Then let's go home." We finished the tour in New Zealand. As we boarded the plane back to the States, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Home. I hadn't been back in over 8 months. What would it be like? How much had changed? How much had I changed? We landed on a sunny afternoon. As we walked through the airport, I squeezed Leo's hand. He squeezed back, reassuring, and then I saw them, my parents, waiting at the arrival's gate. Mom was crying. Dad was trying to look stoic but failing. I ran to them. We hugged, all 3 of us, right there in the middle of the airport. People stared, but I didn't care. "We've missed you so much," Mom said, wiping her eyes. "I've missed you too," I replied, and I had, more than I'd realized. Dad looked over my shoulder at Leo. "And who's this young man?" I introduced them. Leo shook hands with my dad, hugged my mom. It felt right, natural. As we drove home, I looked out the window at the familiar street. It was strange how everything looked the same, yet felt so different. We pulled up to my childhood home. As I stepped out of the car, I took a deep breath. This was it. I was back. That night, we had a family dinner. Leo fit in perfectly, charming my parents with stories of our travels. I sat back, watching, feeling a warmth in my chest. After dinner, Leo excused himself to make a phone call. My mom took the opportunity to pull me aside. "Emma," she said, her eyes serious. "Are you happy?" I looked at her, then at Leo through the window. He was laughing at something my dad had said. I smiled. "Yeah, Mom, I really am." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I had meetings with my publisher about the US leg of my book tour. I caught up with old friends. I even ran into Jack at the grocery store. It was awkward, of course, but not as painful as I'd feared. We made small talk, wished each other well, and went our separate ways. It felt like closing a chapter. Leo found an apartment nearby. We were still taking things slow, but it felt good knowing he was close. One evening, as we were walking in the park where we had our first date in high school, Leo turned to me. "Emma," he said, his voice serious, "I need to ask you something." My heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Was he going to propose? Part of me panicked. Was I ready for that? But Leo surprised me. "I've been offered a job," he said, "in New York. It's a great opportunity, but I wanted to talk to you first." I blinked, processing. "Oh," I said. "Wow, that's amazing, Leo." He watched me carefully. "I don't have to take it. If you want me to stay, I will." I thought about it. About Leo, about us, about everything we'd been through, and I knew what I had to say. "You should take it," I said firmly. Leo looked surprised. "Really?" I nodded. "Really. It's a great opportunity, Anne. I think I need to stand on my own 2 feet for a while." Leo's face fell slightly. I quickly added, "But that doesn't mean this is the end for us. We can do long distance, visit each other, see where it leads." Leo smiled, relief evident on his face. "You're amazing, you know that?" I laughed. "I've been told." We kissed under the stars, in the park where our story had begun all those years ago. It felt like a new beginning. 2 weeks later, I stood with Leo at the airport. This time, he was the one leaving. "Call me when you land," I said, fighting back tears. He hugged me tight. "I will. This isn't goodbye, Emma. It's just see you later." As I watched his plane take off, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. Leo and I had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I I was excited about the journey. I walked out of the airport into the bright sunshine. I had a book to promote, a life to rebuild, and a long-distance relationship to navigate. So there I was, back home, starting a new chapter of my life. It was strange at first, being in the same town where everything had fallen apart, but I was determined to make it work. The first few weeks after Leo left for New York were tough. We talked every day, video chatted when we could, but it wasn't the same as having him here. I threw myself into work. The US leg of my book tour was about to start, and I had a lot of preparing to do. My first event was in Chicago. I was nervous. It was one thing to speak to strangers in other countries, but here, where people might know about the wedding disaster, that was scary. But you know what? It went great. The room was packed. People laughed at my jokes, cried at the sad parts, and gave me a standing ovation at the end. After the talk, a woman came up to me. She was about my age, clutching my book to her chest. "Thank you," she said, her eyes watery. "I went through something similar. Your book. It gave me hope." I hugged her, fighting back my own tears. That's when I realized my pain had a purpose. It was helping others heal. The tour took me all over the country. New York, LA, Miami, Seattle. In each city, I met amazing people with their own stories of heartbreak and resilience. And in New York, of course, I got to see Leo. He met me at my hotel, flowers in hand. We spent a magical weekend together, exploring the city and just being us. But when Sunday came and I had to leave for my next stop, it was hard. Harder than I expected. "I miss you already," I said at the airport. Leo kissed me softly. "I miss you too, but we're making it work, right?" I nodded, trying to smile. We were making it work, but was it enough? Back on the road, I kept busy. When I wasn't at events, I was working on ideas for my next book. My publisher was eager for a follow-up. I was thinking about writing about long-distance relationships, the challenges, the rewards. I had plenty of material to work with. One night, after a particularly grueling day of interviews and signings, I collapsed onto my hotel bed and called Leo. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said, my voice cracking. "The tour?" Leo asked, concerned. "No," I said. "This, us, the distance. It's so hard." There was a long pause. My heart raced. Had I said too much? Finally, Leo spoke. "I know it's hard, Emma, but you're the strongest person I know. If anyone can do this, it's you. It's us." His words gave me strength. We talked for hours that night about our fears, our hopes, our future. By the time we hung up, I felt better. Tired, but better. Leo was right. We could do this. The tour continued. I visited smaller towns, college campuses. Everywhere I went, I met people who'd been touched by my story. In a small bookstore in Montana, an elderly man approached me after my talk. "I wish I'd had your courage when I was young," he said. "I stayed in a bad marriage for 40 years because I was afraid of starting over." His words stayed with me. I realized how lucky I was. Yes, I'd been hurt, but I'd also been given a second chance at happiness. As the tour wound down, I started thinking about what was next. I'd been living out of a suitcase for so long. I craved stability, but the thought of going back to my hometown full-time didn't feel right either. Too many memories, too much history. I called Leo one night to talk it over. "What if," he said slowly, "you moved to New York?" My heart skipped a beat. "You mean, to be with you?" "Well, yes," Leo said, "but also for you. There are so many opportunities here for writers. Anne, I miss you, Emma, so much." I didn't answer right away. It was a big decision. Moving to a new city, starting over again. Was I ready? "You don't have to decide now," Leo added quickly. "Just think about it, okay?" I promised I would, and I did. For the next few weeks, it was all I could think about. I made pro and con lists. I talked it over with my parents, with my friends. I even mentioned it to my therapist. Yes, I started seeing one after everything that happened. Best decision ever. Everyone had an opinion, but in the end, I knew it had to be my decision. The last stop on my tour was Boston. As I stood on stage, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt a sense of completion. I'd come so far from that broken-hearted girl who'd run away from her wedding. After the event, as I was signing books, a young couple approached me. The woman was pregnant, glowing with happiness. "We just wanted to thank you," the man said. "Your book helped us through a rough patch. We almost called off our wedding, but your story gave us the courage to work things out." I smiled, genuinely happy for them, but as they walked away, hand in hand, I felt a pang in my chest. That night, in my hotel room, I made a decision. I called Leo. "Hey," I said when he answered. "Remember that thing we talked about? About me moving to New York?" "Yeah," Leo said cautiously. I took a deep breath. "I want to do it. I want to move move to New York, to be with you, to start our life together. The joy in Leo's voice was unmistakable. We talked for hours, making plans, dreaming about our future. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. I had a plan, a future to look forward to. I flew back home and broke the news to my parents. They were supportive, if a little sad. "We always knew you were meant for big things," Mom said, hugging me tight. Over the next few weeks, I packed up my life. It was strange, going through all my things, deciding what to keep and what to let go. I found the wedding dress I never wore, still in its garment bag at the back of my closet. For a moment, I was tempted to try it on, but instead, I donated it to a charity shop. Someone else could make happy memories in it. The day of the move arrived sooner than I expected. Leo flew in to help me drive the moving truck to New York. As we loaded the last box, I took a final look around my childhood home. So many memories, good and bad, but it was time for new ones. We hit the road early in the morning. As we drove past the now leaving sign at the town limits, I felt a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. Leo reached over and squeezed my hand. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked. I smiled, feeling truly happy for the first time in a long time. "More than ready," I replied. As we drove towards New York, towards our future, I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The heartbreak, the journey, the healing. I wasn't the same Emma who'd almost walked down the aisle with the wrong man. I was stronger now, wiser, and most importantly, I knew who I was and what I wanted. The road stretched out before us, full of possibility. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I was excited to find out. The drive to New York was long, but it flew by. Leo and I talked, laughed, and sang along to cheesy road trip playlists. It felt right, like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. We arrived in New York late in the evening. The city lights twinkled, welcoming us. Leo's apartment, our apartment now, was small but cozy. We ordered pizza and ate it sitting on boxes, too tired to unpack. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Unpacking, settling in, getting to know the neighborhood. I loved the energy of the city, the constant buzz of activity. I started working on my new book, using a small desk by the window. The view of the bustling street below was inspiring. Leo would come home from work, kiss me on the cheek, and ask how the writing was going. It wasn't always easy. We had our arguments, our moments of doubt. Living together was different from long distance. We had to learn each other's habits, quirks, and pet peeves. But we worked through it. We communicated, compromised, and remembered why we chose each other. One day, about 3 months after the move, I got an email that changed everything. It was from a major women's magazine. They wanted me to write a regular column about relationships and self-discovery. I was ecstatic. This was a huge opportunity, but it also meant more work, more pressure. Leo was supportive as always. "You've got this," he said, hugging me tight. "I believe in you." So I took the job. Between the column and my book, I was busier than ever, but I loved every minute of it. As the months passed, New York began to feel like home. Leo and I fell into a comfortable routine. Weekend brunches at our favorite cafe, evening walks in Central Park, lazy Sundays spent reading on the couch. Then, almost a year after our move, something unexpected happened. I ran into Jack. He was in New York for a business trip. We literally bumped into each other at a coffee shop. For a moment, we both just stared, shocked. "Emma," he said finally, "you look great." I smiled, surprised to find that seeing him didn't hurt anymore. "Thanks, Jack. How are you?" We ended up talking for an hour. He was married now, to a woman he'd met at work. He seemed happy, content. As we said goodbye, Jack hesitated. "Emma, I'm sorry for everything." I nodded. "I know. It's okay, Jack. Really. I'm happy now. I hope you are too." Walking home that day, I felt light, like the last bit of weight I'd been carrying had finally lifted. I told Leo about the encounter that night. He listened, holding my hand. "How do you feel?" he asked when I finished. I thought for a moment. "Free," I said. "I feel free." Leo smiled, pulling me close. "I'm glad," he whispered. A few weeks later, on our 1-year anniversary of moving to New York, Leo surprised me with a romantic dinner at home. He'd cooked all my favorite dishes, set up candles everywhere. After dinner, as we slow danced in our living room, Leo suddenly stopped. He took a deep breath, looking nervous. "Emma," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "this past year has been the best of my life. You're my best friend, my partner, my everything." My heart started racing. Was this? Leo got down on one knee, pulling out a small box. "Emma Chen, will you marry me?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. Memories flashed through my mind, the pain of my almost wedding, the journey I'd been on, the growth, the healing. But looking at Leo, I knew this was different. This was right. Yes, I said, tears in my eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. The next few months were a blur of excitement and planning, but this time, it felt different. We were in no rush. We took our time, enjoying the engagement. I called my parents to share the news. They were overjoyed. We always liked Leo, Mom said. He's good for you. As we planned the wedding, I thought about how different I felt from the last time. I wasn't trying to create a perfect fairy tale. I just wanted to celebrate our love, surrounded by the people we cared about. We decided on a small ceremony in Central Park. Just close family and friends. No extravagance, no show. Just us, making a commitment to each other. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. As I got ready, I felt calm, happy, sure. My dad walked me down the aisle. Leo waited for me under a simple arch of flowers. When our eyes met, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. We wrote our own vows. Leo's made me laugh and cry. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and spoke from my heart. Leo, I said, you've been there for me through the darkest times of my life. You've seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. You've encouraged me to grow, to chase my dreams, to be the best version of myself. I promise to do the same for you, to love you, support you, and grow with you for all the days of our lives. As we exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known before. This was right. This was where I belonged. The reception was joyful, filled with laughter and love. As Leo and I danced our first dance, I caught sight of my parents. They were beaming, happy tears in their eyes. Later, as we cut the cake, I looked around at our guests, my friends, my family, our new friends from New York, all the people who had supported us on our journey. I thought about how far I'd come, from a heartbroken girl running away from a failed wedding to a strong, independent woman marrying the love of her life on her own terms. As the night wound down, Leo and I snuck away for a moment alone. We stood on a small bridge in the park, looking out over the water. Happy? Leo asked, his arm around me. I leaned into him, feeling content. More than I ever thought possible, I replied. We stayed there for a while, just the two of us, watching the city lights reflect on the water. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain, the growth, the unexpected twists and turns. I realized that everything, the heartbreak, the travels, the soul-searching, had led me to this moment. To Leo, to this life we were building together. As we walked back to join our guests, hand in hand, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I didn't know what challenges we might face, what adventures awaited us, but I knew we'd face them together.